sometime in the late breath of a Wyoming evening. As snow swirled like pale ghosts across the clearing, Sloan Hollis stepped out of her aging Chevy and stared at the forgotten cabin she had somehow inherited from a great-aunt she barely remembered. The structure sagged under decades of weather, but behind it rose a tall wooden watchtower, lean, skeletal, and impossibly still against the wind. River, her husky mix, padded forward through the frost with a soft grunt, ears pricked in alert curiosity. Sloan inhaled the cold, copper-tinged air and felt something shift inside her, a pull she couldn't name, a sense that this land, though lonely, recognized her. Inside the cabin, dust floated through amber streaks of dying daylight. A leather-bound journal lay open on the table as if waiting. Its pages began as gentle observations of birds, seasons, and cloud shadows, but deeper entries trembled with warnings. Silent footsteps, unmarked trucks, shadows that stood too still on the ridge. Margaret hadn't lived in isolation. She had lived in vigilance. And as Sloan settled in for the night, listening to the forest moan and breathe outside, she felt an old instinct she hadn't touched since her deployment stir awake. Something was out there, something Margaret had been watching, and now it was watching her. Morning light spilled coldly over the clearing as Sloan climbed the weather-beaten ladder of the watchtower. The higher she went, the more the world widened beneath her. Miles of pines, ridges layered like folded paper, and a silence that felt too heavy to be natural. Inside the tower's cramped observation room, she found a steel locker hidden beneath a tarp. Inside it were military-grade binoculars, a folded topographical map, and a second journal, this one filled with meticulous logs, dates, times. Number of vehicles, shape of cargo, night patterns of movement, hand-drawn sketches of unfamiliar symbols carved into trees. Margaret hadn't been a recluse, she had been running surveillance. Sloane's fingers skimmed through the entries, her heart tightening as memories of past operations seeped back, tracking convoys, reading terrain, dissecting silence. She had left the military to escape the weight of responsibility, but here, in this forgotten tower, she felt herself slipping into old roles with unsettling ease. As she descended the tower, River pressed against her leg, whining in a way that told her the dog sensed the same tension she did. This wasn't just land. It was a perimeter, and she had just stepped into someone else's watch. With the journals as her guide, Sloan followed a hidden trail leading toward the northern ridge. It cut through the wilderness with unnatural precision, branches trimmed clean, soil compacted by heavy tires. The forest felt different there, as though holding back its breath. Then she saw them, fresh tire tracks pressed deep into the mud, dual-wheeled and reinforced. River stiffened, hackles raised, nose tilted into the wind. Sloan lifted her head and caught a glint between the branches, not sunlight, not wildlife. Someone was watching her through a scope. Her blood chilled. Slowly, carefully, she backed away, guiding River behind her until they slipped back through the brush. But when they returned to the cabin, the forest felt wrong, too quiet, too aware. And as Sloan tried to sleep that night, every rustle felt like a breath on the window, every scrape of branches like a hand dragging across the walls. Before dawn fully broke, River began digging furiously near a moss-covered stump. Beneath the roots, Sloan unearthed a military ammunition box sealed tight. Inside was a letter from Margaret. "If you found this, then you're already being watched. The ridge hides more than roads. Follow the sky. Trust the ground. Never trust the silence." Wrapped beside it lay an impossibly intricate six-pointed key and a brass disc etched with constellations older than any she recognized. Fate wasn't random. Margaret had chosen her. Using the disc, Sloan discovered a carving hidden in the tower floor. faint lines forming the same constellation. When she pressed a star-shaped notch, a panel released with a deep internal click, revealing a locked steel chest. The star-shaped key slid into the lock effortlessly, as though it had been waiting decades for this exact moment. Inside were tactical logs, maps painted with red trails, and cassette recordings documenting night operations in the mountains. One map showed a section of forest circled again and again, designated K9. The logs spoke of unmarked convoys unloading heavy crates, guarded movements at dawn, and a phrase written repeatedly, "Project Nightfall." Sloan had heard the name whispered in barracks years ago, always dismissed as rumor. But here were cold, tangible records. Margaret had witnessed something real, something dangerous enough to bury itself in the wilderness. And now Sloan understood. Inheriting this cabin wasn't about property. It was about passing a mission from one watcher to the next. As she sat in the tower listening to the wind drag icy fingers across the walls, Sloan felt purpose settle into her bones, the kind that didn't ask for permission. When she returned to the cabin, she stopped cold. A knife was embedded deep into the wooden door, pinning a photograph beneath it, a picture from her deployment days, her unit gathered in dusty desert gear. But her face had been scratched out violently, carved into harsh white scars of torn paper. River growled low and primal. Sloan drew the knife free, her jaw tight. They knew who she was. They knew she was here. And they wanted her to understand she had been marked. That night she reinforced the cabin, layering steel plating behind the door and setting tripline alarms made from fishing line and bells. She studied Margaret's maps, memorizing routes, choke points, and vantage spots. The storm outside grew vicious, snow thrashing against the windows like angry hands. Sloan sat awake with River pressed against her leg, rifle across her lap. This wasn't fear. This was clarity, the kind she hadn't felt since her last mission overseas. She wasn't prey. She was preparing. The attack came without warning. A single bullet shattered the window, spraying glass across the dark room. Sloan rolled behind the table, whispering for River to stay low. A second shot ripped through a wooden beam. Then silence. Calculated silence. Men moved toward the cabin through the snow, their footsteps muffled but their approach unmistakable. She slipped out the back door into the freezing air, using terrain and memory to her advantage. From behind the woodshed, she spotted 3 figures moving tactically toward the cabin. They worked like professionals, silent hand signals, tight formation, no hesitation. Sloan ignited a red flare and hurled it into the snow behind them. It exploded in a burst of crimson, exposing their silhouettes. With a steady grip, she fired near their feet, warning shots that sent them scattering. Using River as distraction and the trees as cover, she fractured their unity until their precision unraveled in panic. Her voice cut through the howling wind. "Leave, now!" They retreated, scrambling into the darkness, not victorious, shaken. For the first time, Sloan felt the land shift in her favor. The mountain wasn't just testing her, it was claiming her as its own. Dawn found Sloan boarding up the shattered window, the cabin smelling of cold smoke and adrenaline. She examined their tracks, measured their distances, and documented everything. Her great-aunt's mission had not died, it had evolved. With the star-shaped key in her pocket, Sloan trekked toward the circled ridge marked K9. There, half-concealed beneath snow and pine needles, she found a steel grate embedded in the ground. A star-shaped indentation waited on the hinge. The key turned with a metallic groan, unlocking a hidden staircase descending into the earth. Below, stale air and cold concrete greeted her. Storage crates, old communications gear, maps connecting nearby mountain ranges, and taped recordings documenting an operation that had roots older than Margaret's time here. The bunker was not abandoned. It was paused, waiting to be reactivated. And now Sloan Hollis was the only one alive who understood its contents. She emerged back into the biting winter air with one realization burning through her. Project Nightfall wasn't dead. It was dormant, and she was standing in the exact spot where it would rise again. That evening, Sloan climbed the Watchtower as twilight soaked the valley in blue shadows. River rested at her feet while she scanned the tree line through the night vision scope. The forest stretched silent and vast, but it wasn't empty. She felt the pulse of something moving beneath the mountain, the echo of secrets Margaret had died protecting. She opened the final page of her aunt's journal and added her own line beneath it. "I am the Watcher now, and I will hold this post." Below her, the valley breathed, ancient and waiting. Sloan wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding. She was standing guard for Margaret, for the truth, for whoever would one day need these records. As the stars emerged overhead, cold and fierce, she whispered into the silence, "I'm here. Come back if you dare." And the forest, vast and knowing, seemed to whisper back its approval. If this story pulled you in, if Sloan's journey struck something inside you, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for more cinematic storytelling. And tell me, where are you listening from, and what time is it where you're listening to this story right now?